Welcome to a new deep dive. Today, we're pulling back the curtain a bit on the engineering side of prompt design. You've probably heard about it.
Mhm.
Specifically, we're going to dig into system, role, and contextual prompting.
Yeah, these are really the kind of the core ways engineers can steer these big language models
Right. So the idea is to get a better handle on how these different types work when you'd actually use each one.
and how they help get, more consistent, more accurate results from the models. That's the goal.
Okay, let's start with system prompting then. This sounds like it's about setting the scene, the sort of foundational instructions.
Exactly. Spot on. System prompting defines the overarching capabilities, the purpose, right from the get-go.
So like before you even ask the real question.
Yeah, pretty much. You're giving the model its core directives. It can be instructions on how to format the output or maybe the general style it should use.
Okay, interesting. Can you give us a practical example? How does that actually, shape what comes out?
Sure. So imagine you're building something to classify movie reviews, right? Sentiment analysis.
Mm-hmm.
A system prompt might be return only the sentiment label and make sure that label is always in uppercase.
Ah, okay. So just positive or negative,
Right.
all caps.
Exactly. And that simple instruction immediately enforces a consistent output format. Think about how much that helps if you're trying to automate things later.
Yeah, that makes immediate sense. No messy parsing needed.
Hmm.
Are there other ways system prompts control the structure?
Oh, definitely. A really common one is asking for the output in JSON format.
Right.
You can use the system prompt to tell it, respond with a JSON object containing these specific keys.
Okay.
And that's super powerful. Not only does it automate creating structured data, which, saves time,
Yeah, huge time saver.
but it also kind of acts as a constraint. It forces the model to fit its answer into that structure.
Which probably helps limit those weird invented answers.
Hmm.
Hallucinations.
Precisely. It gives the model less room to go off script, you could say. It has to make sense within the JSON structure you defined.
That's a really neat side effect. I think I've also seen system prompts used for safety or tone control.
Yes, absolutely critical. You can put things like, you should always be respectful in your answer right into the system prompt.
And that influences everything afterwards.
It significantly influences the model's communication style for the whole interaction. It's a key part of building, responsible AI.
Got it. So system prompts,
Mhm.
the fundamental rules. Okay, let's switch gears. Role prompting. This sounds more like giving the AI a personality.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, role prompting is where you assign a specific character or identity, like act as A.
Okay.
And this lets even a general model give surprisingly nuanced answers because it's tapping into the knowledge and behavior associated with that role.
So what kind of roles work well? Can you give a few examples?
Oh, loads. You could have it act as a seasoned book editor giving critique, or maybe a really patient kindergarten teacher explaining something complex.
Huh.
Or, an enthusiastic motivational speaker, a knowledgeable local travel guide.
Ah, the travel guide. So if I asked for tips on Amsterdam, but I said, act as a travel guide who loves art museums.
The response would be totally different than if you just asked generally or asked it to be, say, a budget backpacker guide.
Right. The museum expert would focus on the Rijksmuseum, Van Gogh Museum.
Exactly. Highlighting collections, history, the backpacker guide, probably talking hostels, free walking tours, cheap eats.
Makes perfect sense. The role gives it a blueprint for tone, style, focus.
Exactly. The whole persona. And you mentioned style. That's definitely part of it.
So you can tell it how to talk within that role.
Yeah. You can specify the style. Should it be direct, descriptive, formal, humorous, inspirational, persuasive? It all goes into defining that role.
You had that funny example, the Manhattan Travel Guide.
Yeah.
Humorous and inspirational.
Oh, yeah. It was something like, all right, adventurer, get ready to conquer the concrete jungle. First, the Empire State Building, go fist bump the clouds. Then, dive into MoMA's chaos, you'll be moved or just confused. And Fifth Avenue, your wallet might spontaneously combust, but you'll look fabulous.
That perfectly captures it. The role completely changes the delivery. Okay, so we have system prompts for rules, role prompts for persona. What's contextual prompting then?
Contextual prompting is all about the specifics for this particular task right now. It's giving the model the relevant background details it needs for the current conversation.
So less about the overall rules or persona and more about the immediate situation.
Exactly. Think of it like filling in the blanks for the current request. It helps the model understand the nuances of what you're asking now.
Okay, how does that work in practice?
Well, say you need blog post ideas. If you just ask, suggest blog topics, you'll get Well, anything.
Right.
Yeah, way too broad. But if you add context, like suggest blog topics for a blog about retro 80s arcade video games.
Ah, okay. That narrows it down considerably.
Right. Suddenly the suggestions become super relevant. The context guides the model to search within that specific area of its knowledge.
So instead of generic ideas, you get things tailored to 80s arcades.
Precisely. It might suggest things like the evolution of arcade cabinet design in the 80s, or
Yeah.
maybe must-play classics, a deep dive into Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, that kind of thing.
That's maybe something about pixel art.
Yeah, from pixels to glory, the enduring appeal of 8-bit graphics. See? All very focused because of that context provided in the prompt.
Those are much more useful. Okay, so let's try and summarize the differences then. System prompts are the big foundational rules.
Fundamental capabilities, overall purpose.
Contextual prompts give the immediate task-specific details needed right now.
Yep, the background info for this turn.
And role prompts shape the output style, the voice, the persona.
Spot on. Frames the output through an identity.
It feels like they could overlap sometimes, though.
They definitely can. You might even set a default role in a system prompt, for example, but thinking about their primary function helps distinguish them.
And knowing these distinctions helps us, as engineers, design better prompts.
Absolutely. It gives you a framework. You can be more intentional. If the output isn't quite right, you can think, okay, do I need to tweak the system rules, adjust the role, or provide more context?
It makes analyzing the output easier, too, presumably.
Yeah, and helps you build prompts that deliver more consistently over time.
Let's talk more about that consistency. Going back to the movie reviews example, how does the system prompt really lock in consistency?
Well, by having that strict rule, only return the label in uppercase, you guarantee the format every single time. It'll be positive or negative, not sometimes lowercase, sometimes mixed case.
Right, which is crucial for any kind of automated processing afterwards.
Totally invaluable, yeah.
In role prompting, how does giving it that funny travel guide persona lead to consistency?
Because that role sets the expectation for the style. Every suggestion, every bit of advice related to Manhattan should come out with that same humorous, inspirational energy.
So consistency in tone and voice.
Exactly. The how of the response is governed by the role, keeping it predictable within that persona.
Okay. And contextual prompting's contribution to consistency with the Retro Games blog.
The consistency there is topical. By constantly reinforcing the context, this blog is about 80s arcade games, you ensure all the suggestions stay on that topic.
It stops it wandering off into, like, modern console games or something.
Precisely. The context acts like a filter, keeping the output focused and relevant to that specific theme. Consistency of subject matter.
So it really sounds like using these three types thoughtfully gives engineers a lot more control. You get more predictable, more reliable outputs.
That's the key takeaway. Effective prompt engineering isn't just throwing text at the model. It's being deliberate. Understanding system, role, and context lets you guide the AI much more effectively.
Towards the behavior, the tone, the accuracy you actually need for your application.
Exactly. Leading to more dependable results in, real-world engineering workflows.
This has been really clarifying. So just to recap the big ideas. System prompts set the stage, the basic rules. Role prompts give it that persona, shaping the voice. And contextual prompts feed it the specific details for the task at hand.
And all three work together to help you guide the model and really nail down that consistency.
It feels like a much more structured way to think about interacting with these models.
It is, and
Right.
I'd really encourage anyone listening as you work with these models in your own projects to actively experiment. Think about, okay, how can I use a system prompt here? Does this need a role? What context is missing?
Play around with combining them to see how it affects the output for your specific tasks.
Definitely. That's how you get a feel for it and achieve those more reliable, tailored results.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the engineering side of prompting. Hopefully this gives you, the listener, a clearer framework.
Yeah. Hope it was useful. It was fun to talk through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you've found this useful and want to keep exploring technical topics like this, definitely subscribe. There's always more ground to cover.
Always more to learn.
Thanks for tuning in.